Hello everyone, and welcome. I hope this story gives you a chance to relax and unwind after a busy day. If you enjoy stories like this, please support the channel with a like, a share, and a subscription. Your support truly means a lot to me, and it gives me the motivation to keep growing this channel and bringing you more entertaining and enjoyable stories. Thank you so much for being here, and now, let's begin the story. At Khaled Gate, in the outer transfer ring above the Khaled corridor, Lena Thorn stood in front of a wall of moving traffic lanes and watched 90 minutes disappear. She was there for one immediate reason. She had been sent to get the evacuation convoy out before the safe departure window closed. The station was supposed to open the corridor and let 3 human colonies leave with the people needed to keep them alive. Instead, Khaled Gate kept stalling. The manifest kept changing, the lines kept slowing, and every delay pushed the convoy closer to a deadband of traffic, where the run would become far more dangerous. The display reached from the deck to the ceiling. 3 convoy columns pulsed in blue. The safe departure window pulsed in white. The station's administrative seal glowed in slow silver above them all, as calm as if nothing in the system was breaking. Beneath the display, thousands of people waited in pressure-rated boarding halls, strapped cargo belts, checked med tags, pulled supply crates into numbered lanes, and tried not to look afraid. They were not waiting for rescue anymore. They were waiting to see whether the station would let them leave at all. Lena was the Earth officer assigned to open the evacuation corridor. That was her surface role, the one printed on the orders every dock supervisor could quote back at her. In practice, she was the last barrier between 3 human colonies and a controlled collapse designed to look lawful. That was why Lena had come in person. Commander Ivo Sarin, her deputy at the gate, stepped up beside her and handed over a slate. Updated departure queue from station administration. Lena took it without looking away from the wall. 3rd update in 18 minutes. 4th, Ivo said. She glanced down. The departure priority table had shifted again. Lane 2 medical personnel had moved back 11 places. Structural repair teams from Vesper. Yard had been broken into 3 smaller subgroups. 24 unverified civilian entries had appeared in front group 1. She read the first 4 lines twice, then handed the slate back. Where did these entries come from? She asked. Station says they were pending identity merges from local registries. Pending since when? Ivo did not answer immediately. He did not have to. The silence was answer enough. Lena turned from the wall and looked across the operations floor. Khaled Gate had been built for freight first, passenger transfer second. The place had wide cargo throats, long loading decks, rough composite floors, and a ceiling crossed by magnetic crane rails. No one had designed it to hold this many frightened people. Portable screens split the floor into lanes and holding pens. Med teams moved between rows with scanners and pressure kits. Dock crews called crate numbers over the public channels. The air smelled faintly of sealant, overheated servos, recycled coffee, and station metal. Near the far window, cargo handlers were loading thermal caskets, folded habitat membranes, water reserves, and compact fusion cells into Convoy Lead 1. That ship was supposed to lead the evacuation out. Beyond it, under harsh white work lights, a line of evacuees stood with clipped movement and tired faces. Most wore the mark of function on their clothes, hands, or posture. A woman from Thornfield Reach still had mineral scoring under her nails from pressure pump maintenance. A man from Khaled Minor wore the soft gray of emergency surgical staff, sleeves rolled to the elbow, his med band still active. A pair of guidance operators stood side by side, both watching the wall with the same hard expression Lena had seen on people who knew numbers could kill. No children. That had been a deliberate choice from the first revision of the list. The corridor was carrying adults with direct survival functions, injured workers, elderly specialists who could still train others, and civilian support staff needed to keep the colonies alive wherever they were moved next. The policy was brutal on paper. It was also the only way to keep the network from hollowing out in one blow. Some people had called the policy cold. Lena had signed it anyway, not because she liked it, because she had read the casualty models. If the wrong people were stranded, 3 colonies might evacuate bodies and still die as systems. A month later, The public channel crackled overhead. Administrative review still in progress. Boarding status remains provisional. Please remain in assigned lanes. A low ripple moved through the waiting groups. Not shouting. Worse, the tightening sound of people absorbing one more delay. Lena checked the central timer again. 87 minutes. She tapped her wrist unit and opened a direct line. Patch me to border command. A station tech looked up from the lower console. You're already in queue, Director Thorn. Remove me from queue. He hesitated. Station protocol dash. I didn't ask for protocol. He swallowed, then routed the call. A man appeared on the main side screen in clip profile before the feed widened. Commander Verexol of Keled Border Administration wore a clean gray uniform with the kind of perfect collar that usually meant the wearer spent more time deciding what would be denied than carrying the cost of denial. His face was narrow, composed, and empty in the disciplined way some officials trained themselves to be. Behind him, someone had dimmed the office lights, so the station seal hovered over one shoulder like a moon. Director Thorn, he said, I am informed you wish to discuss the temporary hold. There is no temporary hold in my clearance package, Lena said. There is an open departure corridor, pending final sequence authorization. Your office is changing the manifest every few minutes. The corridor remains conditional. On what grounds? Cross-jurisdictional civilian verification. Recent instability in outer transit lanes has increased the burden of screening. My convoy carries registered personnel from Earth-recognized colonies under emergency transfer status. And Keled Gate remains responsible for gate safety and throughput integrity. Lena let 2 seconds pass. You're moving med teams and systems crews off the front of the list. Incorrect. We are reviewing queue integrity. You inserted unverified names. We are reconciling discrepancies. She could hear Evo breathing beside her. Hear the cranes moving. Hear the silence across the floor as nearby crews pretended not to listen. If the gate does not open on schedule, Lena said, we lose the white window and spill into the red band. Varek inclined his head half a degree. Then I advise patience and cooperation so the process concludes without further disturbance. There it was. The kind of sentence designed to sound neutral after it had already chosen who would pay for neutrality. Lena ended the line before. She said something that would help him. Evo exhaled through his nose. He wants you to break procedure first. Yes. And if you don't? She looked at the board, at the sliding names, at the shrinking clock. Then he gets what he wants anyway. Her wrist unit buzzed with a priority packet from Earth Relay. She opened it. No to enforcement. No Widaiv. No new authority. Only a one-line advisory from Central Transit Legal telling her to avoid initiating action that could be framed as unilateral corridor destabilization. Lena almost laughed. Instead, she closed the packet and walked toward the lower operations bank. People turned as she passed. They knew her by now. The woman from Earth who had arrived with an orderly convoy plan, promised an exit, and then run straight into the invisible machinery that could delay death while claiming not to be causing it. A dock supervisor blocked her path halfway across the floor. Director, Lane 4 says the med-chill units for Keled Minor are still waiting on customs clear. Ignore customs clear, Lena said. That's not within my dash. Did the units scan clean? Yes. Then move them. He stared at her for a fraction of a second, surprised less by the order than by how easily she gave it. Then he nodded and ran. At the lower console, Analyst Norbalik swiveled toward her with a half-built stack of cross-reference windows floating above the desk. We have something strange, Nurse said. You'll need to narrow that down. The identity additions. The unverified names don't map to a single colony. They map to dead routes. Lena leaned in. Explain. Nor flicked 3 windows open. Registry logs. Transit origin stamps. Lane assignment history. These entries were seeded through old transfer corridors that haven't moved legal civilian traffic in almost 2 years. Some were closed after the Dareth sanctions, some after the refinery strikes. The metadata is good enough to pass a shallow check, but the timestamp bones are wrong. So not random. No, Director. Designed. Lena took a slow breath. Can you prove it cleanly? Give me time. Time. is what they're burning. Another chime sounded. This one came from the medical dock. A voice came through, controlled but tight. Operations, this is Ward Transit 2. We have incoming from Keled Minor ahead of sequence. Repeat, unscheduled inbound shuttle from Keled Minor requesting immediate stabilizing berth. Lena turned. So fast her coat swung. Who authorized inbound? No one, the voice said. They're claiming emergency transfer. Hull telemetry shows field scarring and partial seal loss. The operations floor changed suddenly. Not chaos. Not yet. But everything shifted half a degree off balance. Heads lifted. Lay marshals touched comms. Two med teams started running before anyone told them to. Lena crossed the deck at a stride that made people step out of her path. By the time she reached the inner berth window, the shuttle had already clamped to the emergency throat. The hull was burned black at one side. One stabilizer vane had folded in on itself like broken bone. The hatch cycled. Pressure equalized with a hard metallic thud. Then the door opened and the first stretcher came out. Not soldiers. Maintenance crew. 3 from Keled Minor's surgical power systems. One with chest compression wrap and a blood seal over the left clavicle. Another conscious but gray, one sleeve burned through. Behind them came 2 load frames stacked with field diagnostics, portable life support cartridges, and hard drives and impact cases. A med officer pulled alongside Lena. They rerouted from Keled Minor after a service tunnel collapse. Attack. Unknown. They say the collapse followed a localized systems spike. One of the injured workers raised a hand from the stretcher. Director Thorn? Lena stepped closer. He was older than he first looked, face drawn with shock, but mind still in place. A systems surgeon by the patch on his shoulder. I'm here. They moved our department off final departure. His voice scraped. Whole stabilizer team. They said we'd get the second wave. There is no second wave yet. He gave a grim little twitch that might have become a laugh in another life. That's what our chief said. Med crews rolled him away. Lena watched the drives being unloaded from a shuttle. Not luggage. Not family keepsakes. System archives, calibration records, surgical grid maps, live treatment protocols. A colony trying to preserve its working brain before the body failed. Evo came up behind her. Station Customs wants the shuttle held for intake review. Lena did not turn. No, they're citing emergency irregularity. Of course they are. He waited. Bring the shuttle into protected maintenance custody under Earth Transfer Authority, she said, and move the injured straight through. Varek will say you're breaching local control. Then he can say it, while people are still alive to hear him. That order spread through the floor faster than any official announcement. Dock crews moved. Med coach rerouted. Station administration protested across 3 channels. Lena signed 2 emergency seals and overrode 1 customs hold with a narrow band of authority still attached to her name. She knew exactly what it looked like. It looked like Earth had started acting outside the process. That was the trap. Wait long enough and lose the corridor. Move soon enough and become the disruption the station needed on record. Her wrist unit buzzed again. This time it was not a station feed. It was a direct coded ping from outside the gate architecture. Old frequency family. Civilian repair class. Rowan. For 1 second her face gave away something no one around her would have recognized fast enough to name. Then she opened the line. The connection came in rough. Static. Delay. A worn bridge camera and a lean man standing half in shadow with a torn service harness hanging loose over one shoulder. Captain Rowan Hale of the civilian repair vessel Mercer Fold looked as if he had not slept in a day and a half, because he probably had not. His eyes settled on her like he had been holding them on a closed door for too long. Lena, he said, I'm not killed Gotha. I know. We saw the relay traffic. The Mercer Fold sat at Vesper Yard, the far end of the evacuation line. Rowan and his crew had stayed to keep repair gantries alive long enough for the last transfer decks to function. He was not military, not Earth Command, not anything easy to protect. He was worse. He was the kind of civilian specialist outer colonies grew around, because one ship, one captain, one repair team could decide whether freight moved at all next month. What happened? Lena asked. He sent a packet while he spoke. We traced unauthorized registry pulls inside the corridor network. Not broad sweeps. Targeted cuts. Personnel class, systems class, med class. Anyone who keeps a colony breathing after relocation. A file opened across her display in layered code maps and access trails. Noor was right. Not random. Surgical. How deep? Lena asked. Deep enough that somebody inside the relief routing mesh is feeding it. We only caught part of it because one of my rig techs noticed. Our birth sequence had been copied twice, once clean and once mirrored. Can you identify the source? Not fully, but this wasn't written at the station only. Somebody seeded the logic farther up the chain. The line flickered as if Vesper Yard had lost power for breath. Rowan glanced off screen. Someone called his name. You need to move, Lena said. We're still loading engine control teams and dock welders. If we cut now, the yard dies before the last freight lighters can clear. You cut too late and you die with it. He looked back at her. In that look sat history, trust, and the old stubborn tenderness they had never named well, because both of them worked in systems that punish softness in public. Then don't let them close the lane, he said. The fee dropped. Lena stood very still for half a second, then forwarded the data packet to Noor, Evo, and a secure Earth node that probably would not act on it until the damage was finished. The timer on the wall fell to 78 minutes. Noor's voice came into her ear. Director, if this packet is real, they're not only reshuffling departure. They're selecting for downstream collapse. I know. Then this is bigger than Keled Gate. I know. Noor lowered her voice. Do you think Earth knows? Lena watched the holding lanes through the glass. The med teams. The repair crews. The evacuees who were pretending not to watch the clock. Not in time, she said. Then she started walking back toward the operations center, because whatever happened next would happen through her hands. The first riot never came. That surprised Lena more than most failures did. By the time the safe window dropped under 70 minutes, the people waiting in the lanes knew the station was playing with their lives. They knew because they could see the pauses between announcements. They could see baggage crews standing idle while manifests kept changing. They could see med teams being told to hold stretchers at the throat while verification continued. They were not fools. Most of them worked systems for a living. They understood pattern, delay, load failure, and intent. Still, no one broke the glass. No one charged the gates. No one screamed for cameras. They adjusted straps, checked talks, recounted equipment, shared water, kept standing. That almost made the whole thing harder to watch. Lena used the next 15 minutes like she was cutting wire inside a live housing. Noor tracked the poison list and identified which people were being pushed back. Evo rebuilt departure order blocks. Asha Marin for medical kept flagging the teams that had to leave if the colonies were going to survive after landing. Every update made the same point more clearly. The station was not just slowing an evacuation. It was selecting which future would fail later. Noor built a probability grid showing which personnel classes were being moved down the queue with impossible consistency. Med stabilization, pressure ecology, guidance, structural maintenance, water chemistry, habitat thermal control. Every class essential to long-term survival. Not glamorous, not political, not visible to anyone who liked simple slogans. But essential. Evo broke the convoy down into hard functional blocks. If the list stayed poisoned, they would have to rebuild the departure order themselves from scratch. Chief Medic Asha Marin sent a blunt memo from War Transit 2 stating that if Keled Miner's surgical power teams were delayed beyond the next departure cycle, several patients already under long support would not survive relocation intact. She attached no plea, just data, crisp and fatal. Lena collected each piece and saw the shape more clearly every minute. Someone had done the math. Not just who could be left behind, who needed to be left behind if human colonies were going to survive as shells and fail as networks. If the doctors made it out, but the life support technicians did not, the new site would not hold. If the engineers left, but the water chemists did not, the pressure farms would die in months. If the welders got through, but the guidance staff did not, freight could not move safely and repair schedules would collapse in chain. The enemy was not aiming at emotion. It was aiming at continuity. that made it harder to fight in public, which was probably the point. Lena was studying a revised load grid when the public channel crackled again. Updated departure sequence to follow. All lanes hold current positions. The groan that moved through the boarding halls this time was audible. Not loud, just thousands of people realizing that time could be stolen one official sentence at a time. Nora looked up sharply from her console. Director. Lena crossed to her. Nora expanded a fresh trace map. Found the local injection. Point, she said. At least one. Manifest reconciliation requests were routed through relief mesh maintenance credentials attached to a colony liaison node. Which liaison? Nora zoomed the signature and swore under her breath. Dare Miles. Lena knew the name. Everyone in the Keled cluster did. Miles handled civilian coordination between colony administrations and external relief schedules. He had a reputation for smoothing impossible queues and getting people where they needed to go by charm, persistence, and a willingness to work every side of a corridor at once. That reputation now looked different. Can you prove active access? Lena asked. Partial proof. Enough to say he touched the queue. Not enough to prove who gave him the logic. Where is he? Station says off-grid in liaison transit. Of course he was. Evo folded his arms. Do we pull him publicly? No, Lena said at once. Not yet. You want him to keep thinking the station still controls the board. I want whoever sits behind him to keep thinking I still believe this is a local delay problem. The timer slipped to 61 minutes. The white lane on the wall seemed smaller now, less like a window and more like a wound closing. Lena called up the original Earth departure order and overlaid it with the poison one. Then she opened a third layer and began dragging blocks. Medical Stabilization Core, Pressure Ecology Core, Water Chemistry Core, Structural Maintenance Heavy Teams, Guidance and Dock Control, Field Surgery Support, Power Systems, Hull Repair and SEAL Crews, Civilian Support Workers attached to all above. Not families, not rank, not broad humanitarian categories. Pure continuity under forced relocation. She knew what the station would say if this became formal. That Earth was privileging technical classes. That it was discriminating between civilians. That it was worsening the moral burden of the corridor. All true in narrow language. All useless if the alternative was long starvation, system failure, and slow death spread over 6 months, so cleanly no one could pin it to a single command. Director Asha Marin said over channel, one of the Keled minor system surgeons is crashing. Lena closed her eyes for one heartbeat. Can ward transit stabilize? For now. Not if departure slips much longer. Keep him alive. We're trying. Lena sent the new priority table to her inner team only. Evo saw it first. You just rewrote the whole evacuation. I corrected it. Varek will call it unilateral Q seizure. Then let him use the right term. Nora looked at the blocks and then at Lena. This will save the colonies as systems. That is the point. And if the station locks us down before you publish it, then we move people manually. For the first time that hour, Nora's young face turned openly afraid. Director, if you move them manually, security will say Earth is triggering a border incident. Lena looked toward the main display, where white minutes kept vanishing in total silence. Earth didn't build this incident, she said. We're standing inside it. She pushed the revised order to lane marshals, med control, cargo chiefs, and every convoy lead still loyal to function over paper. The floor changed again. Not with noise. With purpose. A med team peeled away from a waiting line and wheeled 2 critical care techs toward lead 1. A cargo supervisor quietly shifted 3 water reclaim pallets across deck markings under cover of a crane swing. Line marshals began calling certain tags forward on internal channels instead of public boards. Dockhands who had spent their lives surviving bureaucratic stupidity recognized what was happening faster than the officials did. Once they understood the pattern, they stopped looking upward for permission and started helping downward where Lena could use it. That was the thing systems thinkers often forgot. A station could be governed from above. A departure was made from the floor. Varek's soul called back within 4 minutes. This time his face held a tightness at the jaw he had not shown before. Director Thorn, my office is receiving reports that your personnel are altering certified departure order. My personnel are preserving evacuation viability. You will cease immediately. No. A pause. Behind him, someone said something Lena could not hear. Varek muted for half a second, then came back. You are not authorized to conduct independent reclassification under Kaled Border Authority. I am authorized to prevent a humanitarian transfer from being turned into long-term systems collapse. That is your interpretation. Yes. You are escalating a civilian pressure point. No, you are. The control in his expression hardened into something colder. If you continue, I will be forced to record Earth Transit Command as non-compliant with Border Stabilization Order. Record what you like. His eyes narrowed a fraction. You understand what that opens. Lena did. Sanction. Seizure. Claims. Political framing. The entire ugly machinery that turned a slow killing into a lawful dispute. She also understood that if she backed down now, Vesper Yard's repair crews, Kaled Minor System surgeons, Thornfield Reach's water chemists, and half the people who gave the cluster any future at all would die by sequence. I understand exactly what you're doing, she said. Then she cut the line. Evo gave a low whistle. Well, we're past subtle. That happened a while ago. Nora's board flashed red. Director. New inbound from Vesper Yard. Priority signal for Mercer Fold. Lena opened it at once. Rowan appeared again, this time with emergency lights running behind him in alternating amber. The camera shook. Somewhere nearby, metal screamed. We lost Doc Spine 3, he said without preamble. Not total loss, but enough to close half the load path. What caused it? Power drop, then hard overvoltage on a maintenance arm. Too neat to be failure. Someone's chewing the yard apart one section at a time. Can you still clear? With the engine teams and the habitat welders, yes. With a full heavy repair train, no. Lena pulled a breath through her teeth. How long? Rowan checked something off-screen. 40 minutes if nothing else breaks. Less if somebody decides to help us die faster. The clock behind her said 54 minutes left in the white lane. We won't have 40, she said. I know. He looked straight into the lens then, and the rest of the room fell away for her. If you have to choose the core teams and cut the rest, do it before the station does it for you. Lena said nothing. You hear me? He pressed. I hear you. Then don't waste the corridor trying to save the shape of the old plan. The line cut on a burst of static. For one long second, Lena could not move. Then she turned to Evo. Build me a split departure model. Best extraction if Vesper clears only partial. His eyes widened. Not because the order was difficult, but because it meant she had accepted what Rowan meant. That some people would not fit into the white window if the yard kept breaking. We may have to leave equipment, Evo said. We will leave anything that doesn't think, heal, steer, pump, weld, or keep air moving. Nor opened another layer of traffic on her board. Director, station security teams are shifting closer to Lane 1 and Lane 3. Visible posture? Controlled but deliberate. Varek wants witnesses before he locks a hand on us, Lena said. Asha's channel opened again. Systems surgeon stabilized. Barely. Good. That's not good, Director. No, Lena said. It isn't. She looked over the floor again, and for the first time all day, let herself feel the scale of what was sitting in front of her. Not just the convoy, not just the station, but the simple brutal fact that somebody somewhere had decided human colonies would be easier to rule if they survived without the people who made them hard to kill. That idea carried the kind of violence that rarely made clean headlines. No explosions bright enough. No courtroom confession. No dramatic public speech. Just a station seal, glowing silver, while the right names slid down a list. Lena straightened. If they want lawful collapse, she said, half to herself, then we make collapse expensive. Nor heard her. Ow! Lena looked at the wall and saw not a schedule anymore, but a battlefield disguised as routing architecture. By making them choose between the corridor they wanted and the corridor they'll actually get. That was the moment the story changed. Until then, Lena had still been trying to rescue the departure with discipline and proof. After that moment, she began planning how to take the corridor away from the people who thought they owned it. By the time the white window fell below 50 minutes, everyone on the floor understood that Khaled Gate was no longer a delayed transfer point. It was a controlled choke. Lena kept the truth off the public speakers and pushed it through working hands instead. Med chiefs, dock supervisors, lane marshals, cargo heads, and senior team leads got the real order. If your tag shifted 3 times in an hour, trust the floor runner, not the board. If you worked water, med power, guidance, pressure ecology, structural repair, or habitat systems, stay ready. If anyone tried to split your team, confirm with Earth operations before moving. Nor traced the Q tampering back to Darren Miles and proved what Lena already suspected. The gate was not failing. It was selecting. Every time a critical team rose near the front, the system slowed. Every time Vesper Yards signaled readiness, the list changed again. The station was trying to make the white lane expire without visible violence. Then Helion screen moved from observation posture to active oversight, and the fiction died. Once armed peacekeepers were standing over a civilian corridor, Lena stopped trying to preserve the old convoy shape. She and Evo rebuilt the departure plan around survival function alone. To keep the path clear in her own team's minds, Lena split the convoy in 2. One would be the visible convoy, bright and obvious, the one everyone on the station would think mattered most. That one would be the bait. The other would be the real convoy carrying the people the colonies truly needed. The visible spine would carry command lights, false med signatures, transponder weight, and enough empty mass to look essential. That was the decoy ship. The real core would move through internal lane 6, an old maintenance lane beneath the main traffic pattern, hidden inside dull service shells that looked too boring to matter. Asha packed the critical surgical planners and med power crews into the real convoy. Jules Narek and the water chemistry teams went under reclaim loads. Arlen Veit and his junior guidance operators disappeared into service carriages beside NAV cores and pressure-sealed route banks. The station kept watching the bright shell with the command lights, while the people who mattered most to the future of the colonies slid into the forgotten lane beneath it. When Darren Miles queried the visible lead for command weight, nor fed him exactly what he wanted to see. When Helion scanned, it found a loud center. When Varek looked down from his office, he saw Lena standing beside the decoy, signing route audits, and wearing authority where everyone could record it. Then the public order came. All civilian movement was suspended pending peacekeeping review. Lena gave the floor one instruction only. Stay with your marshals. Follow direct orders. Do not stampede. Then she launched the hidden convoy and lit the false one. At the same time, the real convoy began to move through internal lane 6, hidden inside service traffic and dull maintenance shells. Rowan called once more with 32 minutes left. This time he did not bother pretending calm. We lost another gantry and half a pressure door. My engine crews are loaded. My structural team is not. How many? 23 if I keep the whole deck unit. 12 if I strip to pure transfer capability. Lena, close her eyes briefly. Strip. He did not argue. That hurt more. And Rowan, she said, yes. If you don't clear in time, I will not hold the whole corridor for one ship. He looked at her for a long beat. I know. No accusation. No plea. Just truth, and the kind of trust that made truth harder to survive. We're moving a fractured convoy, she said. If we make it clean, follow the dead relay signature after white window, plus 20. Not before. He understood at once. You're showing him the wrong spine. Yes. A corner of his mouth almost moved. Cold. Necessary. Same thing out here. She wanted to say, come back alive. Wanted to say too much and too little all at once. What she said was, do not be brave for free. He nodded once. You either. The feed cut. Evo had been standing just far enough away not to listen. Afterward, he said, he's not going to make your life easy, is he? No. Good. The timer hit 30 minutes. Station security took 2 steps closer to the visible lead. Helion screen moved a fraction inward in the outer traffic map. Darren Miles finally made his mistake. Nor caught a fresh access echo from the liaison mesh, quick and dirty, pulling visible transponder assignments and command signatures from the public convoy spine. Director, she said sharply, someone just queried lead 1 with command weight parameters. Lena did not look surprised. Mirror the query path. Give him what we want. Nor's hands flew. Done. He'll see your flagship shell, your command relay pallets, med chill signatures, and topside route tags. Good. Should I poison the thermal read too? Not enough to look fake. Just enough to keep him confident. Nur nodded, jaw tight. That was all they needed. Confidence. Not certainty. Certainty invited scrutiny. Confidence made people act fast on what they wanted to believe. A dock welder named Suri patched in from the lower bay. Director, internal lane 6 is ready, but the old mag clamps are sluggish. If we push too hard on launch, we risk a choke at the first turn. Lena, answer at once. Then you don't push. You feed it as a service string. Slow enough to look boring. Suri actually laughed. Boring I can do. Do boring. Be out fully. Always. Then the floors split into action under silence. The visible lead. Power haunt. Command lights rose. Transponder signatures sharpened. Station drones flocked toward the way cameras always flocked toward the place authority wanted most seen. At the same time, beneath and behind the show, the real convoy began to move. One maintenance frame, then another. A med service shell. A structural transport. A scrubber carrier with living human experts strapped behind dull equipment plating. A water chemistry crate with Jules Narek's team hidden under tool, webbing, and reclaim rods. Arlen Veit and his 2 juniors tucked into a service carriage beside a NAV core large enough to hide a man if necessary. All of it slid into internal lane 6 with the careful, unimpressive cadence of repair traffic no one important ever notices until it stops. Lena remained above with a visible lead. Evo joined her there in the open, because if this went wrong, he would not let her stand alone in the record. Once we light full command, he said quietly, Halion bites. That's the idea. And if they board before the real convoy clears, then we burn the lead and buy time. He studied her face. You expected this all day. I hope not to need it. That's not what I asked. She looked toward the main berth where station security was finally moving in with actual purpose. Yes, she said. I expected it. Varek Sol appeared on the overhead authority screen without invitation, magnified over the hall so everyone could see his polished comm. All personnel are instructed to remain in present positions, he said. Unauthorized launch attempts will be treated as transit destabilization under emergency civil control. The wording was clean. So clean almost glowed. Lena keyed her own unit and sent one last narrow burst update to every hidden convoy marshal. Continue. Then she looked up at Varek's giant face and thought, for one vicious second, how easy it was to sound civilized when someone else had to bleed in your timing. Security reached the ramp to lead 1. Director Thorn, the lead officer, called. By order of Keled Border Administration, you are to suspend launch preparation and submit convoy command for review. Lena did not move. On what authority? Emergency Stabilization Authority. Over an Earth humanitarian transfer corridor. Over all border activity within Keled control. She let the seconds draw. Behind her, the visible lead's engines rose a fraction louder. Below and away, invisible to most of the deck, the true convoy kept slipping into the old lane. The officer took another step. Director Dash, a station-wide proximity alarm screamed from the outer board. Everyone looked up. Helion screen had moved. 3 peacekeeping vessels crossed from observation posture into direct corridor intercept alignment, drawing a bright red cone across the visible departure spine. There was no more pretense now. No one deploys intercept geometry for paperwork. The hall erupted, not into a riot, but into the first true sound of fear. People shouted for marshals. McCrews crouched over stretches. Security barked into comms. Drones whined and dipped. Lena felt the moment hit like pressure loss. This was what the whole day had been built toward. Get Earth to move first or trap Earth in visible non-compliance under an armed peace frame. Fine. She opened the main command channel. This is Director Lena Thorn of Earth Transit Command. Convoy Lead 1 is initiating emergency departure under survivability doctrine. Any attempt to physically obstruct launch will be recorded as direct interference in a protected civilian transfer. Evo shot her a look. You just gave them the public line. Yes. And the hidden convoy. Still hidden. He almost laughed because at that point, what else could anyone do with fear except use it? The security officer shouted for her to stand down. Lena climbed the ramp into lead one. It was theater now, and she knew it, so she played it correctly. Inside the shell, command relays hummed. False med signatures pulsed green, and half the cargo behind the rear bulkhead was empty mass designed to scan like importance. Two junior command operators stared at her with wide eyes. Director, hold until my mark, she said. Hell Ion screen is painting us. I know. What if they fire? Then they stop pretending. Outside, security teams fanned wide instead of boarding. Good. They were afraid of being caught physically on a launch shell if Hell Ion escalated. Fear made systems clumsy. Nur came over the hidden channel from below decks. The real convoy is at 50% insertion. Good. Asha said, critical med cases are in. Need 4 more minutes for full transfer of power teams. Lena looked at the timer. 21 minutes. Take 3. 3 won't clear dash. Then choose the ones who keep the most people alive after landing. Silence. Then Asha, professional to the bone even while. Her voice roughened, said understood. Lena gripped the edge of the command table hard enough to whiten her knuckles. Those were the moments command never taught properly. Not the dramatic ones. Not the heroic speeches. The moments where someone says choose and another person on the other end says understood because there is no better word for accepting a wound. The outer board flashed new law text across every public screen. Temporary peacekeeping containment in effect. That would look excellent in the archive later, Lena thought. Clean font. Symmetric language. No mention of the filtered names or the dead routes or the fact that containment was aimed at a civilian convoy because the wrong people were trying to leave together. Nor again. Director Darren Bitt. He pushed the visible lead coordinates out through liaison mesh. Hell Ion has them all. Lena allowed herself one thin breath. Good. Evo stood at the internal hatch, listening to 2 channels at once. Station security is moving to cut external umbilicals manually. Let them. They'll think they're trapping us. They are trapping empty importance. Then Asha's voice came back, lower this time. Mispi naluwated. Nur said, guidance team's clear. Suri from lane 6 said, internal service string at 70%. Slow and boring, just how you like it. Jules Narek from a hidden shell said, water crews in. Hiklain is sikwuted. One by one, the essential pieces clicked into place. Not all of them. Never all. But enough to mean the colonies might live as more than refugee bodies. Hell Ion screen broadcast, then finally abandoning legal language. Keled Gates civilian launch spine. You are ordered to remain docked pending peacekeeping review. Non-compliance will trigger containment action. Lena opened the channel. Peacekeeping detachment. Your intercept posture is currently focused on a protected civilian evacuation route. This route is under temporary stabilization. No, Lena said. It is under political suffocation. Director Thorn Dash. She cut the line before the man on the other end could make himself feel righteous. Evo stared at her. That one will definitely be in the record. Good. The hidden channel lit solid green across Lena's board. Real convoy fully inserted. Lane 6 live. For a second, all sound narrowed to her own breath. They had made it. Or rather, the possibility of making it now existed. Everything from here would be cost. She keyed the hidden convoy channel. This is Lena Thorn. Internal spine launch on my mark. Novro a transponder bloom. Stay dark, stay dull, follow service spacing until rejoin. If you lose the ship ahead, do not compress. If you see pursuit, do not panic. Let guidance do its work. Across the deck, through metal and distance, no one answered with cheers or speeches. Only clipped acknowledgments, one after another. The kind that told her professionals were in place. Arlen Veit, Jules Narek, Asva Mirin, Suri, Guidance 1, Med Shell 3, Repair Spine 2, Water Core, Pressure Ecology Team, Vesper de Corveridok. Then one more voice, rough with static and distance. Mercer fold in partial clearance, Rowan said. We're coming in hot and ugly. Lena shut her eyes for 1/2 beat. Join dead relay after +20. If we make +20, you make it. A quiet crackle. Understood. She opened her eyes and marked launch. Internal lane 6 began to flow. No spectacle. No brig departure flare. No grand command signal. Just one dull service shell after another, peeling into a route no one watching from above considered important enough to fear. At the same instant, Lena ordered the visible lead to power hard. Engines roared. Command lights flared. Transponder bloom exploded across the public board. Every camera, every security eye, every Helion intercept system locked onto exactly what she wanted them to see. Lead 1 lurched free of the berth clamps. Containment response, Helion announced. There it is, Evo muttered. The outer screen went violent with movement. Peacekeeping vessels shifted. Targeting cones sharpened around lead 1. Keled gate security scattered from the ramp. Station drones chased the shell in frantic arcs. From below came no sound at all, which was perfect. Lena stayed in the visible lead long enough to let Helion commit. A warning shot streaked across the forward lane and burned white in the dark. Not a hit. A leash. The hall gasped as one body. Director, the junior operator whispered, they're trying to pin us in corridor space. Yes. Should we return active challenge? No. Helion's command voice came again, stronger now. Lead 1. Reduce thrust and prepare for peacekeeping escort. Escort. Another pretty word. Lena watched the tracking map. Helion was following exactly the visible command profile Dare Miles had confirmed for them. Their attention cone widened around her ship and the decoy lane beyond it. Meanwhile, internal lane 6 kept feeding the real convoy into darkness. Evo listened to his earpiece. Spine clear to midpoint. No intercept. Good. We can still cut, lead 1 free, and run. Not yet. She needed Helion fully committed. Needed every eye drinking from the wrong cup. A station-wide external camera feed filled the main monitor as lead 1 crossed into the first bend. The shell looked important, powerful, central. Exactly the kind of thing an armed force would imagine mattered most. Good. She ordered a route burn to deepen the illusion. The lead shell sent a clean command pulse outward. False med loads, false command priorities, false urgency. A convoy spine loud enough to draw every knife. Then Nor came over channel, voice sharp with disbelief and triumph at once. Director, they never flagged lane 6. Not once. Keep watching. I'm telling you, they're blind to it. No, they're dismissing it. And there, Lena thought, was the whole shape of the war. Not always hatred, often contempt. The assumption that what worked quietly beneath power could not possibly decide the future. Helion committed the second mistake 5 minutes later. They launched pursuit drones after lead 1. That locked them in. Lena turned to Evo. Prepare to cut command shell free. He blinked. Now, if I stay in this hull, they stay with the shell. If I split visible command farther out, they chase the flag longer. You want to leave the decoy while it's under pursuit. Yes, that is a terrible idea. It's also the best one. They transferred false command authentication into a detached auxiliary pod small enough to outrun the shell's mass and bright enough to look like authority abandoning ship in desperation. The pod had one purpose. It would make Helion think Lena herself was breaking away with the real command core. Then Lena did something colder than anything she had done all day. She signed her own command code onto the pod. If Helion got a clean read, it would look as if Lena Thorn herself had taken the breakaway route, which meant they would follow her instead of the real convoy still moving through lane 6. Evo understood 2 seconds after she did it. No. Yes. You can run the pod remote. They'll check signal complexity. They might not. They will. He swore. Lena Evo, listen to me. If they keep tracking lead 1, they eventually discover its guts are wrong. If they track my pod, they waste the rest of the window. And if they fire for effect. She held his gaze. Then they prove what this was. Silence. Then, very quietly, he said, I don't like the arithmetic. Neither do I. He looked away first, which was as close to assent as she was going to get. The transfer took less than a minute. Outside, Helion pursuit drones narrowed in. The lead shell shuddered under a glancing containment pulse. Warning alarm screamed. The junior operators went white-faced. Lena moved to the auxiliary lock. Before the outer seal cycled, she opened the dead relay channel one last time. All internal spine units continue. Do not react to visible command loss. Repeat, do not react. Your job is not me. Your job is the corridor. Acknowledgements came back clipped and hard. Then one private line opened under all the others. Rowan, you still there? He asked. Barely. That usually means you're about to do something I hate. Probably. A beat of static. Lena, if he had asked her not to go, it would have been worse. If he had begged, worse still. He did neither. Instead, he said, if this works, I'll buy you the worst station coffee in human space. Something in her chest tightened so fast it hurt. That coffee already exists. Then I'll buy two. She let herself breathe once. Catch up to the spine, Rowan. You too. The line closed. Lena climbed into the pod. The hatch sealed. Systems came alive around her in a ring of compact displays and stripped survival controls. No room for fear in a pod like that. Barely room for body heat. Auxiliary command free, she said. Evo's voice came back through the shell. I hate you a little. Get in line. You know I'll have to live with that. Live first. She triggered separation. The pod blasted out from lead one on a hard angle burn, flaring command authentication like a scream in vacuum. Helion followed instantly. Of course they did. The main pursuit cone bent after her, pulling drones and one escort line away from the decoy shell, then farther again into the outer turbulence beyond Khaled Gate. Exactly where she needed them. Lena gritted her teeth as the pod shook through Wake Shear. Warning lights flared. The tiny hull was never meant for prolonged chase. It only had to last long enough. Behind her, Lead 1 continued on a staggered path with reduced command signature. Below and away, the real convoy moved under dull service, spacing toward the rejoin channel. Somewhere far back at Vesper Yard, Rowan Hale was trying to drag the last repair crew through a dying dock. And all of it depended on time. Just time, stolen back now in burning handfuls. Helion hailed her once, then twice. She ignored them. A containment drone fired another pulse across her bow. The pod reeled. Something in the left stabilization bank failed with a deep metallic crack. Lena corrected by hand. She had flown worse, but not by much. Through the side display, she could see the great curve of Khaled's outer transfer field falling behind. Station lights shrinking into a cold cluster. Somewhere inside those lights Varric's soul would be discovering, too late, that the thing he'd centered might not be the thing that mattered. Good. The pod screamed a proximity alarm. A Helion escort had cut the angle too aggressively, trying to box her toward a dead sector. Lena dumped heat, dropped thrust, then snapped the pod through a maintenance drift vector so old and ugly that any clean tactical algorithm would rate it low probability for a trained command officer. That was why she used it. The escort overshot. One pursuit drone clipped its wake and spun. For 7 precious seconds, the chase loosened. Nora's voice came through on tight beam, half disbelieving. Director, the spine just cleared rejoin. Repeat, the spine just cleared rejoin. Lena let out a breath she had forgotten to take. Any intercept? None. Good. Lead 1 has been boarded remotely by scan. They're reading false heavy profile and command stacks all through the hull. They still think the core is split between the shell and you. Perfect. Evo came on next, voice ragged with battle noise and adrenaline. The empty queen fooled them, Lena. They're furious. Stay alive anyway. Trying. Asha came next. Mais spine is stable. We have power teams, systems surgery, and most reclaimed personnel. Missing 1 thermal crew and 2 habitat welders. Lena shut her eyes just long enough to feel the cut of that. Not total rescue. Never total. Understood. Jules' Narek came on with Thornfield dryness, even now. Water loop brain is out, director. You can stop stealing my future for dramatic effect. She almost laughed. Glad to hear your optimism survived transit. Professional habit. Then Rowan's signal burst through in chunks, weak and breaking. Mercerfold. Outer drift. One engine gone, but we're moving. Lena hit transmit at once. Can you reach the spine? Maybe. If nothing else in the universe becomes stupid. That feels optimistic. Professional habit, he said, echoing Jules without knowing it, and the line cracked out. A Helion voice finally cut through all channels with the edge gone from official comm. Auxiliary Command Unit, shut down now. You are obstructing peacekeeping containment. Lena answered then, because they had earned one sentence. You built your containment around the wrong center. She killed the line before the reply arrived. The pod jolted so hard her shoulder slammed the harness. A light went black. Another turned amber. She had maybe minutes left before the frame cooked itself, or Helion decided that preserving appearances no longer mattered. But the convoy spine was clear. The people were moving. The future had not been selected entirely by the list. That was enough for now. Helion changed tactics. Instead of trying to leash the pod, one escort broke hard back toward the corridor. Lena saw it and swore. They were learning. Not fast enough, maybe, but learning. Evo, she snapped. One escort is turning back. He answered immediately. I see it. Can you challenge? With what? Angry maintenance loaders? Use traffic noise. Use the decoy shell. Use anything. Nur cut him before he could. Director, I can flood the corridor board with conflict signatures from the old freight lanes. Make it look like instability across the return vectors. Would Helion buy it? For 90 seconds? Maybe. 90 seconds is enough. Do it. The board noise hit a moment later. False conflict blooms. Ghost wakes. Spoofed collision alerts seeded through old freight channels no one should still have trusted, but many tactical systems still respected enough to hesitate over. The returning escort slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Evo sees the gap. Lead 1 is venting thermal waste into the return lane. They'll think our drive is failing hot. Meaning they may choose to secure the shell instead of chasing the shadows. Lena understood. Helion wanted trophies as much as control. A captured visible command ship with Earth signatures and a public incident on record was worth more to them than a vague pursuit through confused freight space. Good, she said. The escort bent back toward lead 1. That bought the convoy the rest of the window. Sometimes survival turned on grand strategy. Sometimes on someone's weakness for visible victory. The pod's right thruster failed completely 3 minutes later. Lena lost half her fine control and went into an uncontrolled roll before stabilizing through manual vector trim. Alarm screamed in overlapping tears. Her wrist bled where metal had cut skin under the harness. She kept flying. A new contact bloomed on the edge of her board. Not Helion. Mercerfold. The civilian repair ship limped into range with one engine band dark, hull scored, and half its external frame lit by damage warnings. It should not have looked beautiful. It did. Rowan's voice came through, rough and amused in a way that said pain had reached the point of absurdity. You look terrible. You are not close enough to insult me. Give me 30 seconds. Take 20. Mercerfold cut across her drift line and flashed emergency grapples. It was insane. Improvised. Risky. Exactly the kind of thing a repair captain with a half-broken ship and no patience for elegant plans would do. The first grapple missed. The second caught. Lena felt the pod jerk sickeningly as Mercerfold dragged it into a dirty tandem burn away from Helion's nearest drone spread. Rowan came over the line, breathing hard. There. Now, both of us look terrible. Professional habit. Always. Helion tried one last challenge, but by then the corridor geometry had changed too much. The real convoy had gone. The decoy shell was a mess of false command architecture and empty weight. The pod was tangled to a damaged civilian repair ship in the wrong sector. The white window was gone, and what remained belonged to after-action, accusation, reconstruction, and blame. The live kill had failed. Lena did not smile. She was too tired, too hurt, and not enough people had made it cleanly for smiling. But she let herself lean back against the harness for 1 second as Mercer Fold pulled her away. Nora's voice came through first from the safe side, then Asha's, then Jules, then Arlen, then 3 more ships from the spine, each one a clipped report, each one proof of life. Final count would come later. Losses would come later. Political fallout, certainly later. But the core was out. The doctors, guidance crews, water chemists, med power teams, pressure ecology specialists, welders, repair operators, and structural minds the colonies needed were mostly out. Mostly. Sometimes mostly had to count as victory, or there would be no victories at all. By the time Mercer Fold linked into the safe rejoin channel, Lena could barely unclench her hands. Rowan met her in the docking throat himself. He looked worse in person. One side of his face smudged black with engine soot. Cut at the brow. Left arm wrapped in a field brace. He looked at the pod, then at her, then at the blood at her wrist, as if cataloging damage before allowing himself anything else. "You always did prefer dramatic exits," he said. She climbed out on unsteady legs. "You were late. I brought coffee in my heart." That sounds medically concerning. For a moment, in the hard, bright throat of a damaged ship full of exhausted workers and save specialists, they simply looked at each other. Then he stepped forward and caught her before the deck could tilt enough to take her down. It was not a kiss, not a confession, nothing that would pull the story away from the thing it had cost so much to hold together. Just one tired, fierce human being making sure another remained upright. Around them, Mercer Fold's crew kept moving. A systems surgeon was carried past toward the med bay. 2 water techs argued over a cracked case seal. Arlen Veit was already asking to see the route logs, because of course he was. Jules Narek was explaining to anyone who would listen that the reclaimed chemistry had survived, and therefore civilization had not fully embarrassed itself. Lena let Rowan keep one hand at her elbow for exactly 3 seconds longer than she needed. Then she straightened. "Status," she said. His mouth tilted. There she was again. "Mercer Fold will limp," he said. "Not pretty, not fast. But the spine is ahead of us and alive." One med shell lost outer plating, but held pressure. One habitat team missing 2 people. "We picked up 6 from a service frame that dropped behind." She nodded. "And the station?" he asked. Lena looked toward the forward display, where Keled Gate had shrunk to a hard point of light already buried under emerging legal traffic and accusation bursts. "They'll say Earth destabilized a protected border process." "Did we? We disrupted a controlled selection." "That is not what they'll write." "No." Rowan watched her face. "We'll central back you." She almost answered with bitterness, then decided she was too tired to waste energy pretending she felt less than she did. Only if the evidence becomes too expensive to deny. Can you make it expensive? That at least made sense. She turned to the nearest comms operator. "Patch me to every neutral relief node, independent medical relay, trade observer, and civil corridor monitor that still accepts raw route evidence." Priority burst. The operator blinked. "Now! Now!" Evo came in from lead 1 moment later on relay, alive and furious, and sounding more offended by the state of the universe than injured by it. "The shell is mostly theirs." "Mostly. I kept them busy first." "Good. We left them one very angry puzzle. False med signatures, fake command routing, thermal waste, empty mass, and enough contradictory logs to ruin an auditor's week." Lena closed her eyes briefly. "Did anyone on the shell die?" A pause. 2 injured loaders were hit during the last containment pulse, he said. "We got the rest off before final breach." The victory narrowed inside her without disappearing. "Understood. I thought you would say more." "There is nothing better to say." Another pause. Then, softer, "No, there isn't. The raw evidence package took 11 minutes to build. No speeches. No editi montage. No rhetorical framing. Just the truth in machine language and timestamps. Dead route manifest seeds. Mirrored identity inserts. Priority suppression against systems critical personnel classes. Station lock orders. Helion intercept geometry against a civilian transfer spine. Recorded delay overlap with function-specific queue advances. The public suspension notice. The peacekeeping containment order. And most important of all, the proof that the official corridor had become hostile, while the real convoy had to escape through disguised service routing because the people in charge were trying to choose which human future would fail later. Lena added one line of human language at the front. Khaled Gate did not fail. It was used. Then she sent it. Across neutral relief nodes. Across independent med exchanges. Across trade monitors who cared less about human suffering than about systems precedent, but would still understand the danger. Across outer lane civil observers who had watched too many border authorities hide violence inside procedure. She sent it before Earth Central could soften it. That was probably insubordination. She slept fine with it. The replies did not come all at once. But they came. A neutral surgical league demanded clarification from Khaled border. 2 trade observers flagged irregular corridor coercion. A civil transit monitor released a preliminary statement asking why peacekeeping vessels had assumed intercept posture against a protected transfer lane. 3 independent route guilds requested raw copies. An old relief network from the refinery wars sent a plain text response that simply read, "We saw. We remember this shape." That last one stayed with her, because that was the real horror of systems like this. They repeated themselves until someone forced enough light onto the pattern that memory could no longer be denied. Mercerfold reached the temporary safe anchorage 9 hours later. Not a planet, not home, just a patched logistics shell yard in neutral drift with enough dock length for damaged civilian ships and enough political ambiguity to delay seizure. The people disembarking did not cheer. They were too tired, too hurt, too aware of what had not made it with them. They carried cases, med archives, reclaimed kits, NAV cores, repair tools, thermal blankets, pressure braces, and the heavy stunned silence of those who understood that survival was not a clean event, but a transfer of burdens. Lena walked the arrival line with a wrapped wrist and a shoulder packed in cooling gel. She stopped for each critical team chief. Counted eyes, counted cases, counted the invisible things too. Whose knowledge survived? Who could still teach? Who could rebuild? Who had lost someone in the cut? Jules Narek stood beside a stack of water chemistry modules and looked offended by the temporary shelter provided for them. "This place smells like rust and legal compromise," he said. "Then you'll feel a home. I preferred the station where people were trying to kill me politely." He glanced past her at the arriving med teams. "We lost Turin," he said more quietly. "Loop diagnostics. Took the containment pulse on the Thornfield transfer shell." Lena nodded once. She had no apology large enough. Jules, save her from trying. Make sure his records teach somebody. That's the only thing he would have asked. "I will." Arlen Veit cornered her 10 minutes later with his 2 junior operators and 3 route slates already open. "The rejoin turbulence on lane 6 can be tightened if we ever have to do this again." Lena looked at him. "We just finished doing it once." "Exactly. Which means next time should be less amateur." Despite everything, she laughed. That was the kind of thing human colonies ran on as much as oxygen. Not optimism exactly. Refusal. The almost rude insistence that if disaster repeated, then someone would at least improve the map. Asha Marin found Lena near the med staging deck. "We held them," Asha said without introduction. "How many didn't make transfer?" 3 after launch. 2 before rejoin. None for Med Power Core. We kept the surgeons. We kept the grid planners. We kept enough. Enough. There was again. Asha rubbed at her own eyes with a gloved hand. "I hate that word now." "Me too. Will it be enough for the cluster?" Lena looked out through the dock glass, where repair crews were already unloading pressure ecology systems and water chemistry units into temporary staging. Not because anyone had ordered speed, because the people who survived knew delay could become death if allowed to settle into routine. "It gives them a future someone can't choose from a list," Lena said. Asha gave a tired nod. "Then I'll take enough." Earth called the next day with warnings, praise wrapped around reprimand, and careful language about diplomatic fallout. Lena heard all of it and accepted none of the comfort. What mattered was simpler. The evidence had spread too fast to bury cleanly, Neutral monitors had started asking why a protected transfer lane had been treated like a military target, and every border office in the outer lanes now knew Khaled had not gone unnoticed. There was no immediate war. There was no justice clean enough to balance the names that had been lost. But there were new escorts on humanitarian runs, harder registry protections on colony continuity personnel, and a growing understanding that pressure applied through paperwork could still trigger a strategic response. 3 weeks after Khaled Gate, she stood in another transfer yard, this one on the edge of the relocation build for the surviving core teams. Rows of temporary habitat frames stretched under construction lights. Water reclaim modules were being fitted into new loops. Med planners from Khaled Minor argued with structural crews over clean power priority. Arlen Veitz Jr.'s were teaching newer route men under his supervision. Jules Narek had already made himself feared by every warehouse manager in the sector. Asha Marin was setting up a surgical grid inside 2 linked pressure domes. Mercer Fold hung overhead in dry dock, ugly and alive. Lena walked the line at shift change. People nodded as she passed. Not reverent, not theatrical. The nod of workers to someone who had stayed in the same reality they had. At the far end of the build, she found Rowan standing beside a half-installed relay tower with one arm still in a lighter brace. That coffee station they're building, he said, looks dangerously competent. Don't worry, we'll ruin it. He looked out over the rising habitat fields. Hard to believe this was almost a list. Lena followed his gaze. The temporary site was rough, loud, unfinished, and underprotected. It had dust in the air and weld flash in the distance, and too few walls for the people inside it. But it also had movement, intent, continuity under strain. Humans carrying their future in crates, cases, and stubborn hands. It was a list, she said. Then it wasn't enough. He nodded slowly. Far above them, traffic lights moved along the outer lanes. Trade, aid, military, relief, pressure. The whole galaxy still turning with its systems, its hierarchies, its elegant words for ugly force. None of that had vanished. None of it had softened. Somewhere beyond the lanes, men like Verexol would still be working. Structures like Dominion Balance would still be modeling dependency as if it were peace. There would be more border pressure, more corridor games, more attempts to turn human survival into something granted conditionally by larger powers. Lena knew that. So did everyone building below. The difference now was not safety. It was posture. Khaled had not ended the pressure. It had changed the memory of what happened when pressure was pushed too far. Human colonies had not been saved cleanly. Earth had not emerged unhurt. No one stood in a hall and made the galaxy fall silent with one perfect speech. Instead, a convoy had been split. A list had been broken. A false center had burned bright enough to draw the weapons away. Doctors, welders, route mines, water chemists, med power crews, and repair teams had crossed alive. And a system that preferred to kill by paperwork had been forced, for one ugly moment, to show its hand in the open. That mattered. More than a speech would have, perhaps. A shift bell sounded across the build. Crews changed over. Lights deepened toward the evening cycle. Somewhere nearby, someone cursed a snap clamp, and someone else laughed. Rowan touched the relay tower with the back of his hand, as if testing its vibration. You know they'll try again. Yes. You know we'll still be out here. Yes. He looked at her and smiled with only half his mouth, the tired kind of smile built for long roads rather than endings. Good. Lena stood with him under the work lights and watched the site come alive for another shift. Not healed. Not whole. Not beyond danger. Alive anyway. And in the outer lanes, where larger systems like to press until smaller ones folded, that was not a small thing. Sometimes it was the first answer. Sometimes the only one that counted.